it really bothered me to come up here and talk about this guy and knowing that I'm giving him life. Nick needs this to survive. Nick needs the limelight. Nick needs the notoriety. See, the only thing that we really doing, we giving him a transfusion. We resurrecting him.
All roads led to Harlem, and all roads led to Nicky Barnes in those days.
This big Kunta Kinte in Harlem, you know, there's the Al Capone of Harlem.
Yeah, you know, you see him standing up there, you know, looking like the guy, our black godfather.
I'm your mama, I'm your daddy, I'm that nigga in the alley. I'm your doctor when you need, want some coke, have some weed. You know me, I'm your friend, your main boy, thick and thin. I'm your pusher man. I'm your pusher man.
Nicky Barnes was the face of heroin trafficking during that period in the 1970s.
These guys could have been on the Fortune 500, the way they dealt with things, you know. There was something that was professional, that you could admire that was being done, obviously under the nose of a lot of policemen.
This was an affront to law enforcement. This is like thumbing the nose at DEA, the Department of Justice. You want to go right up the line to the Attorney General and the President of the United States?
Ain't I clean, bad machine, super cool, super mean, feeling good for the man, super fly.
You're never gonna have another Nicky Barnes. Those days are over. There is no loyalty. Loyalty is the dollar. There's treachery. There's not loyalty.
Nicky Barnes was a coward who crossed his friends. People that really loved him and would have died and killed for him. And he shitted on them.
Strike the king, you got to kill him or he's gonna take your ass out. That's just what happened. They struck me when I was down and he didn't kill me. I came back and moved him. If you strike the king, you gotta kill him. I read Shakespeare, I read Melville, I read Philip Marlowe, I read Hawthorne, Paul Tillich, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And then Machiavelli, he says that there is no right or no wrong, it's he who has the biggest guns who determines what's right and what's wrong. But to us, it meant that if you're in powder, you got to be vicious.
Enforced discipline. They protected themselves by deciding on and ordering the murders of anyone they suspected of being a threat.
I remember a homicide where they threw a guy out of about 4 or 5 story building after they shot him, rolled him up into a rug.
It ain't personal, it's just business. You know, I like you and all, but you fucked up. You know, so you gotta get this. And it ain't what you owe, I guess it's how you owe. You know, you can owe a guy money and then you disappear on him. Then the next week you're driving a brand new car. That's like the ultimate insult. It's saying we soft. You know, that if you let one guy get away with that, then everybody's gonna get away with that. Then you have no strength and no power.
We learn growing up because we've seen it. We've seen how violence is used to solve problems. Maybe we learned it at home. I can remember the time. I think I was 12, maybe 13 years old. My dad was really just a jive motherfucker. We came in around 9, 10 o'clock, whatever it is, and they had this big argument, and he smacked her, and so I ran and, tried to help my mother, and he pushed me to say, "Oh, it's all right, you motherfucker, you." When he charged toward me, I pulled the motherfucking zip out, and he said, "Oh, that's not a gun," and I fired it. Bam! But the motherfucking gun blew to pieces in my hand. My mother there, she's screaming and stuff, and I ran, I jumped out the window. Pow!
The big stuff. Who do you think you are, Mr. Big Stuff?
Well, Nick was kind of like a golden boy. Everybody liked him. Nick, myself, and others. And this group was no more than just a bunch of guys with similar backgrounds who grew up in the same neighborhood. And people that are locked out have to find some kind of innovative way to get in. Right? You tell me success is a 10-foot wall, you give me a 5-foot ladder, now how the hell do you expect me to get up there and get mine? So they come up with innovative ways of doing it. And in the process, they become what I call sidewalk executives.
When I first started hearing about Nick, we were dancing at Smalls. I had gone into the bathroom, and when I came out, Nick was coming through the door, and everybody, it just looked like the whole aisle just opened up when he just walked through the door. And he had on these shades, and he was just dressed impeccably. He had these big pretty dimples, and he was smiling. And when he walked past me, the first thing I remember, he just smelled so good.
Back then, that's when Small's Paradise was jumping. Jazz started bringing me around that circle. So when we go down to this bar, this is when I met Nick's bodyguards, Smitty and Bobby. So Smitty turns around, he's like looking at me. Now you gotta understand, I'm about 135 pounds soaking wet. These guys are 3 and change. So we're sitting there, so Smitty eases up beside me. He says, "What's up, little nigga?" I'm like, "What's up?" So who you come to see? I'm like, I was very arrogant. I'm like, "Well, you writing a book?" So now he grabbed me around the throat, throw me on the ground. Jazz and Nick runs out of the back of the bar, like, "What's going on?" So I'm like, "Yo, get him off of me, get him off of me." So he said, "Yo, they come to see me." Takes me uptown and he tells me, "Have I ever heard of Nicky Barnes?" I'm like, who hasn't heard of Nicky Barnes in Harlem? The Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, who hasn't? And on the way there, he was like, "What do you want out of life?" I'm like, "I want money like everybody else." He said, "What are you willing to do to get it?" I'm like, "Anything it takes to get it."
Everybody wasn't eating back in 70, 71, Everybody was not eating when he came along. Everybody was eating. Everybody was riding. Everybody was wearing nice clothes. I'm not trying to glorify what he did, but he was just there on time.
I had the businessman's persona. I wanted powder. I wanted a lot of powder. That's the reputation that I had among Italians. If you got it and it's good, give it to me.
He was one of the few African-American drug dealers who was trusted by the Italian-American mafia as someone to do business with.
The users and the dealers are going where quality is. When a user comes on the street to buy, they don't say, "Well, who's the meanest motherfucker out here?" They say, "Who got the best power?" Nicky Barnes got the best power.
The big money was really on the street. If a guy could control a wholesale level, buy it wholesale, and then get it all the way down to the street, because In the past, it normally passed from different little groups and they all took their cut. What Barnes did was he eliminated that. He bought it wholesale from the Italians and he distributed it right down to the street. And there was huge money in that.
This is a New York quarter. When I left the street, if you heard someone was scrambling, that's what they were selling. What made this particular quarter so famous was that my quarters, you could dump that quarter out, go get a quarter of cut, a quarter of manite or manita. Take that quarter of manita and put it with my quarter. Blend them together, and they would have 2 quarters. And that's what the innovation was. I was there. I used to be a drug addict. You know, I used to do this. I used to be the guy down on the bottom. I used to get these things. And when I got them, I always wanted to be able to take it home and use some and mix it and then take the rest out in the streets. And that's why I did it like that. And it worked. I lived on 115th Street and 8th Avenue, which is where I eventually started selling narcotics. This guy used to come to me, I don't remember his name, and the guy came to me and told me he wanted me to keep these little brown paper bags. They were caps of heroin. I didn't know it at the time. I was making good money with him.
He was actually a pretty good student and had pretty good comments from teachers as a youngster. He went into the drug business because he saw the role models around him, the Bumpy Johnsons and other famous or infamous drug dealers from Harlem. Those are the fellows who were cool, who had the cars and the wealth and the power.
Having hard times in this crazy town.
We're talking about at a point in time when Harlem is essentially falling apart. Harlem during the period when the whites and middle class had completely moved out to the suburbs, and all they left behind were people who couldn't get out.
There's no love to be found.
I started using it when I was about 14 years old. I was a drug addict, shooting it every day, several times a day. It's a sensation, it's kind of a mystical, uplifting feeling, kind of levitating, and these little bells go off. Ding, ding, ding. A lot of people feel it.
Nicky Barnes, he was in prison. We ended up meeting in the weight pile. He had a book he was reading one day, and I asked him what the book was, and he showed me the book. It was The Prince by Machiavelli, and he gave the book to me to read, and I read it. And Machiavelli, very devious character. I think most of our politicians today have read him also. Anyhow, we developed a relationship as a result of that. I didn't know anything about drugs before I went in, you know, or the trade, anything. You know, I really actually learned that while I was in. And you often hear them referred to as crime schools in the past. Well, that's exactly what they are.
This thing formulated in prison. It was like a cold conglomerate of criminal masterminds, I would say.
There were times when I was talking with either Matty Madonna or times when I was talking with Joey Gallo, and we talked about organizing people to be more concerned about money and less concerned about violence.
When he was away, he had hooked up with the mob, you know, I mean, with the big Italians, you know, and that kind of, it guaranteed that he was going to have a lot of drugs and that they were going to be good.
What kept me from going back to using drugs was the fact that I knew I couldn't really make money if I was a user. I wanted to make money out of drugs, and I wanted to make a lot of money. And I said, shit, I get out this motherfucker, man. I'm not gonna use no drugs. I'm just gonna sell it.
Darkest of night with the moon shining bright. There's a set going strong, a lot of things going on. The man of the hour has an air of great power. The dudes have envied him for so long. Oh, Superfly.
I was known as the guy who was connected to organized crime. And when I came home among the powder community, that was big fucking news.
Oh, Nicky Barnes is coming home. The street is just ready for him to come home.
This cat of the slum had a man, wasn't dumb.
First of all, there was a lot of people that were going to get some jobs, and everybody's going to make money.
But the man lived alone. Ooh, Superfly.
Every place he went, people just wanted to be around him, wanted to look at him. I mean, he was a true superstar.
The only game you know is do or die.
Barnes was preying on his own people. He was addicting the very people that he was trying to be a role model to.
Ooh, Superfly.
This shit was going everywhere. I just told him, I said, look, the powder is supposed to sell itself. You got to have powder that people will stand in line to get it. I want enough shit out on the street. I want the street to be saturated, so whenever a buyer comes, our product is gonna be out on the street.
You know, I remember around 127th, St. Nick's, around that area. The bags that would cop there. It was regular, it was consistent. When you inject heroin, you feel no pain, and all is well with the world. That's at first. Then at some point, it gets to be not to get sick. And you would do whatever you needed to do not to get sick. We don't have any poppy pills, that I know of in Brooklyn. And we forget that someone else is pulling the strings, man, and calling the shots.
I have been asked whether or not I, as a dealer, was being a tool of a white man. That's probably a question that I just can't answer.
Through the 70s, Nicky Barnes always had a case, or two, or three. The first major trial that we had was the bribery case. He was acquitted. Jury said not guilty, and he looked at me after the jury verdict was read and he said not guilty. And there was this look of incredulity on his face, and he said, would you believe this? And I said, I do. I think I did a hell of a job. Everybody got into cars, and we headed up to 125th Street. There was a place called the Purple Manor. All of a sudden, he said, we're going to have a celebration. He took a bottle of champagne and broke it open and said, we're going to make David an honorary nigger tonight. A drunk came up to me and said, you got $2? And Nick looked at Smitty, this 408-pound gargantuan young man, and Smitty took him. He grabbed him by the butt and by the back of the neck, and he drove him into the ground like he was a spike. He said, that's Mighty Whitey, man. Are you crazy? You can't bother Mighty White. And that was how I became an honorary nigger.
When you're in state trial, your attorney has full latitude to kind of cross-examine, or they call it voir dire, examine the jurors. I remember one time, there was a case in the Bronx, and this guy, he was on the jury, and he was staring at me. So Dave zeroed right in on him. What would you say if I told you that my client, as he sits here, is absolutely innocent? The juror said, well, if he was innocent, why is he sitting there? So they managed to get him off of the jury.
I became a little arrogant now because after the jury came back in the murder case, he was acquitted. I said, what are you going to do this year? Last year you made me an honorary nigger. He says, this year we're making you an honorary black man. So I said, what's the big deal? I was made an honorary nigger last year. He said, Dave, we don't hang out with niggers.
What?
I think that's when that initial Mr. Untouchable name attached, and it just traveled along with me as part of the baggage I had to carry. It's not like I came over like some lone gunman you see in the white movies. The guy come and take over the whole town. You know, one guy. One guy just kills everybody and takes over the whole, takes all the cattle and takes all the everything, you know what I'm saying? Takes all the fine bitches, and he's always in the bar giving everybody a drink and you know, just shooting motherfuckers. You know? It's not like that didn't happen. I just saw things developing that kind of coincided with ideas that I had in my head. So, you know, with 100 pounds of stuff, you got to put it in somebody's hands. You can't do it yourself.
Brothers gonna work it out.
Council was this group of people who sat around with Barnes and they formed policy, like all councils would.
One of the things that I think when you think of a business or you think of the council is you're thinking of a certain structure. It's like there's a CEO and a president and a CFO and a COO.
What takes place in the underground economy is the same thing. It just mirrors what's taking place above ground, you know, just like business.
There were 7 members in the council. There's Frank. There's Ishmael. There's Gaps. There's Wally. There's Jazz. There's Guy and myself.
Guy was the pretty boy. He was the pretty boy. He was the guy that knew all the girls. Frank, he was the bully. You know, Frank was the bully. Brother and Jazz were like similar. They both like philosophers. You know, they used to read a lot and they used to teach a lot. And everywhere we went, it was like we were known. You know, I mean, we didn't have to pay for nothing. Everybody wanted to be in our circle. Just their mere presence struck fear in a lot of people.
That's Frank. Yeah, look at Frank. Look at that smile on his face. That's how it was. That's how we were together, man. We were getting money and clicking on all cylinders. Frank used to always say, how soon we forget. That was a favorite saying of his. Yeah, how soon we forget. Yeah, this is Jazz over here. Jazz's strength was that he was basically a good stand-up brother, you know. And if we had to put on a ski mask and do something to get from point A to point B, he'd be down with it. There's Scrap right here. Scrap was a part of Jazz's crew, but very reliable. Scrap would go in hell wearing dynamite drawers with Jazz. Okay, it's Guy. He was a youngster. He was really enthusiastic about making money. And I liked everything about the way that he managed things. The Guy saw me as a father image. This was my family, and I was a dad.
I remember one night I was going to meet Jazz at this bar, and I ran a light. So the cops pulled me over, and they're harassing me. And I'm sitting there, and they're like asking me for my license registration, and Smitty said, "What are you doing?" I said, "He wants my ID." He said, "Man, fuck him. Park the car, go in the bar." So I'm like, "You serious?" He said, "What'd I say? Go in the bar. People waiting for you. Yo, get the fuck out of here." And the cop got in his car and left. I said, "That's fucking power. This is the shit I'm a part of." I felt invincible.
The Oath of Brotherhood was 7 words for each of the 7 members of the council. Treat my brother as I treat myself. And there was a certain mystical dynamic present when we said it, because we would bind hands together and we would utter these words.
I treat my brother as I treat myself is in the Quran. There were some who criticized us on calling ourselves Muslims. We can take from it those elements which expand us as human beings and unify us as a group, the same way the Italians do with the Bible. So, what's the big deal?
The first thing that always stands out in my mind is that they were men. They were men in every sense of the word. And they were constantly challenging themselves and wanted to travel and learn and see the world. It was not just 110th to 155th Street. That was a very small part of who they were. They always had this thirst for knowing more and doing more and being seen as more.
These were the same guys that, along with others, made it possible for Harlem Week. These guys cared about Harlem, and they cared about the people in Harlem. It's all right to make money in the community as long as you give something back.
At certain times of the year, Easter, Christmas, New Year, Thanksgiving, the people would come in and say, "I need help." And then you left with a turkey.
He had that benevolence to him, the Thanksgiving Day turkeys, the spending money. He was giving something back to the community that he was raping and abusing and killing.
My whole focus was the money. As harsh as that sounds, I mean, this guy wanted to destroy his life getting high. What I care, I'm not trying to run for sainthood. I'm trying to get paid. I had this one guy who was like my sampler, Claw, down on 116th Street. I mean, this guy's arm, do you know he didn't die till they took his arm off? I mean, his body really lived off the poison. As soon as they took him in the hospital, I mean, if Claw got a hit, you had a bomb. Because he didn't have no place to put it. So if he felt your product, you said, "Oh man, you got a winner." If it was garbage, he wouldn't even, I'd pull the car, be like, "Yo, just keep going. Because I need to get high, and that shit you got is garbage."
My life, my life, my life.
I think we brought to the business a particular type of expertise, because I was a former drug addict, Frank James was a former drug addict, Thomas Foreman, former drug addict, Joseph Hayden, former drug addict.
If you ain't got customers, you ain't got a business, straight up. You don't. And the customers are the ones who drive the business, The old timers knew that. We say old timers now, but really, the guys who had the game at the time took care of the customers. Then Nicky Barnes was a dope fiend at one point. That's why he had a whole different way in which he done his business, straight up. I mean, you were buying their product, and the customers meant money. Cussies meant dollars.
My life, my life, my life.
I think people, when they hear about a Nicky Barnes, they might have a vision of a guy that picks up narcotics himself and cuts it, and it hangs around playgrounds selling dope to school kids. My operation had reached the level of sophistication wherein all I did was meet my supplier. My principal supplier was Matty Madonna. He was Italian. I would meet him, we would sit down, and he would tell me what it was he had available for me. I would provide him with an automobile. The narcotics would be placed in the automobile. They would be dropped at a pre-designated location. They would be picked up by whoever I assigned to pick it up. And then the business would function like a well-oiled machine.
You know, there was girls on the table, you know, just people that did that as a living. But they used to steal. I said, just make them come in naked with no clothes on. He said, that's what I'll do.
You know what we're gonna do? Them bitches come up there, take motherfucking clothes off. Make them bitches strip. If they don't want to strip, fuck them. We won't hire them. And that's how that started.
We used to come out like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, we was finished. And I would do it like 1,500 to 2,000 quarters a day. I was making, I'd say 10,000, between 10,000 and 15,000 a day.
Need some money. I need some money. I need some money. That is dead.
Money. In my mind, money was so important and so valuable that this was the pinnacle against which we measured everything. That's what the American dream is all about. Getting money and getting things. You have to have 10 or 15 stacks of $1,000 in the house at all times, you know, just to be comfortable.
I think he modeled the council after his experiences with the mafia. He had learned a lot from the mafia, and he had taken it, he had been a good student, where now the student was in some ways better than the teachers. Now he was making, you know, just boatloads more money than they could dream of.
Black racket money stays in Harlem. No more mafia, police, mayors, senators, judges, or presidents. It's our money up here. Let's keep it.
There was conflict between me and Carmine Galenti. He was saying that I was getting too big for my britches. I think Carmine thought that East and West Harlem were provinces of the Italians, and for black guys trying to move out on their own, they were kind of confronting their colonial powers. I was like the first. I was the first black dude to tell white boys, look, you motherfuckers can't come over here fucking around. Collecting money from this dude over here because he owes me money. You got to see me. Because 9mm make everybody the same motherfucking size. The demographics of the business has changed. And you have to recognize that. Because now I'm here. And now we're here. And this is our neighborhood.
Love and happiness. Yeah. Something that can make you do wrong, make you do right. Yeah. Love.
Those were good days. I think probably we just had really great chemistry between us. And she liked to spend money. She enjoyed shopping, enjoyed jewelry, and, you know, like we used to always say, she had a black belt in shopping.
You know, if I saw a pair of shoes, I'd just get every color that they had, and I'd have like, I don't know, a box of money, maybe with $2-3 million in a box of money. And the only thing he would tell me was just write a note. If you take out $10,000, $20,000, just write a note, because that way when I give this money up, to my connects, the money won't be short. They don't think I'm trying to, you know, short them out of $50,000 that you done took out of this box, you know. So, you know, so the life was good, you know, and so you just get kind of sunk, you know, pulled right into it.
His wife loved me. I mean, she was my idol. She was trying to teach me how to be a lady. You know, Thelma used to always kill me with that. I'm going to teach you how to be a lady yet. You know, okay, whatever. I think one time Thelma took me to Henry Blundell to get my hair done and get a massage and pedicure and manicure. I mean, I wasn't used to that.
We had our first child. We had a little girl, and he was just ecstatic. He was ecstatic. He was just like really, he just made me always feel like a little girl.
I don't think I could give you a conventional analysis of what love is. You know, I was thug, I was in the thug life, and I wanted thug love. And thug love is composed of different elements. It's composed of that willingness to hold if your man is carrying. It's saying, hey, I want to be a part of this, and I know that this is a part of you, and hey, I'm open to making my contribution.
One day we were driving to New Jersey, and he took me to this house, and I was like, God, that's a beautiful house. And he said, that's your house. And I was like almost passed out. I remember sometime he used to come in, and because I was a dancer, he used to always want to learn how to do the hustle, right? And I remember sometimes he'd come in late, and my daughter, when she had gotten a little older, she would hear him come in, and she'd get up, and she'd jump on the sofa, and she said, you're going to dance tonight?
I probably was kind of recklessly self-indulgent. Anything that I wanted, I tried to have it. Women, that was one of my excesses with women. There was something about pure cocaine in young women that held an inevitable attraction for me, and all of them were at least half my age.
When I get this feeling, I want sensual feeling.
Oh, Shametta. Shametta was my favorite girl. Her body was gorgeous. You know, big hips, tiny waistline, big behind, nice breasts, good-looking face. Really gorgeous, man.
I introduced her to Nick. She was gorgeous. I remember we had a party in Jagazi's, and she came. She's in all white. Nick asked me, oh, who's that? I said, oh, that's my friend. So I introduced her. The next thing I know, they do what they do. You know, she's got a new Mercedes.
Oh, wow. It's hard to describe Shametta. She was pretty. She knew she was pretty. After she found out how Nick felt about her, she became a hot mess.
You could automatically see from the very beginning that it was going to be different with Shametta, that he felt something for her and that she meant something to him. And Thelma sort of fell out of the picture.
You know, I had 2 children, so my life was kind of consumed, you know, with home at that point. He started smoking angel dust, you know. So at that point, he started changing.
I got really, really heavy into that goddamn dust. They used to mix dust and all that shit together. Is that whole combination it would prolong the orgasm, man, that's something, man. I mean, not only are you having the orgasm, but it's kind of done in slow motion. Sometimes when I was off with Mecca, we would both be high off of that shit, and we would come together. Boy, that's a motherfucker, man.
You know, all these girls, always was glamorous. And I used to say, oh man, it's good to be the king. And he used to say, no, it's not. You don't want to be the king. He said, always. He said you could be a prince among thieves and you don't want to ever be a king, because the king is the first one that goes.
Uneasy is the head who wears the crown.
America's public enemy #1 in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive.
We put a little bit of a fright into some of the drug dealers. Sometimes they felt bad things would happen when we were around.
I know the history of drug policy. You know, it was racist from the very beginning. It is racist to the core. Just see who's locked up.
Listen to me. There was just so much going on in the city, so much right out in the open that made it unsafe to go into certain areas. It was prostitution, it was robberies, it was burglaries, it was armed confrontations. There's doors getting kicked in, there's fighting, there's shooting, and the fuel that was going into that tank of criminal acts was the money from heroin.
I think New York City had about 2,000 homicides a year. You'd have turf wars, and you had people killed all the time.
Listen to me. Whoa, it ain't nothing but a heartbreak.
Something had to be done, and community leaders and politicians didn't want to see, whole generations of their youth destroyed by narcotics and be destroyed by the likes of Nicky Barnes.
They wanted me to be the first person that they arrested under this Rockefeller law, because they had the Drug Enforcement Administration and the narcotics bulls were just all over me, man.
If you want to get the rats, you got to get into the sewer. It says in any cases, you get a bit of luck. And so the luck factor in the Barnes case was that the FBI would turn us on to Bob Geronimo. And he proved to be the person that could get us on the inside.
Cars are very important in the ghetto. I knew guys that had Mercedes-Benzes, new Cadillacs, new Buicks, new whatever, and they went home and they lived in the projects, but they had that car. And this kid in the neighborhood, Wally Fisher, who I knew to be a car thief, and he saw me buying new cars, and a couple of weeks go by, I come out of the house one day, and my Corvette's gone. Wally could have took $7 grand from me, cash, it would not have affected me as if he took my car. When he took my car, that was personal. The way I looked at it, Wally fucked me first. I was gonna fuck him back, bottom line. And I was gonna do anything in my power to accomplish that.
Geronimo's uncle was a mob guy, he was a maid guy from Pleasant Avenue, and he ran with black guys as a kid. And he ran with this guy, Wally Fisher, as a kid. Fisher was the brother of Guy Fisher, who was Nicky's main lieutenant. So he said, well, you know what? I know this guy, Nicky Barnes. You might be interested in him.
Robert Geronimo had a code name. With a name like Geronimo, why do you need a code name? Welcome Back, Kotter was a show that was on television at the time. And there was a sort of slick street guy, white guy, named Barbarino. And that was Geronimo's code name.
Eventually, I get introduced to Geronimo, and I basically laid it down to G. I says, G, let me tell you something. This is a partnership. This is a brotherhood, okay? And there's sometimes they wouldn't have to do things. We're going to have to do some left-handed things that only you and I are going to know. That's the only way we're going to get over. But I tell you what, one thing, this is a fucking bond. This is a brotherhood. You fuck me, I'll fuck you twice.
First and foremost, I didn't consider myself white, okay? When I say white, my skin tone is white, but I talk black, I act black, I'm from that. So to me, being around these people were nothing new. So it was not some white guy getting off a bus and saying, hey, I'm here and sell me drugs. When I brought Louis on the scene, it was so obvious we couldn't be cops, and we probably weren't hitmen from the mob because it was just too obvious. It was so obvious, it was believable.
And Wally, up to this juncture, was basically fetch a stepper, if you will, for the Barnes organization. It was like a guy being on a team, sitting on a bench. You're a player, you want to play ball, come on, coach, put me in a fucking game, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's what Wally felt like, he felt like he was being stepped on. He wanted to be somebody, he wanted to have respect, and this is one way he could get it, with two wise guys.
Wally was the weak link, and we were going to attack the weak link. We weren't there for Wally Fisher. I wasn't there for Guy Fisher. I was there for Nicky Barnes.
My rule was that we don't talk about drugs in a car, on the phone, or in the house, or anywhere where it could be overheard. If we get together as a group and we want to sit down and talk about something, turn on the blender. And we'd be talking like a motherfucker about drugs. There were times when the DEA was behind me. Of course, they trailed me regularly, but I would lose them motherfuckers, man. There were certain routes that I knew that I could take and turns that I could make that they couldn't possibly know where I'm going.
We would try to purchase drugs from everybody. We would try to entwine everybody into it. So they beep the horn, they pull over, I pull over, I get in the back of their car. It was brown, it was chunky, I said, oh, really? I webbed my finger, I stuck my finger in it, and I put it in my mouth, because I saw that on TV somewhere, and I've never tasted something so disgusting in my life. And they looked at me like, what is this moron doing? And I went, oh. I didn't know that's what you were supposed to do with coke, not heroin. I was told by DEA that there was word on the street that the country boys were going to hit Nicky.
Frank Lucas, the country boys. They came up from South Carolina. Rumor has it he had this guy who was shipping this thing over here in coffins from Vietnam. And it was like primo material. They had to pay a tax. Okay, you got goods, but you don't have no real estate. We own all the real estate in the Harlem and in the Bronx.
Frank got a big mouth. He sound country, and he sound ignorant. Yeah, I say, I can hear him say, yeah, shit, I'll kill that motherfucker, shit. Yeah, shit, yeah. I don't give a fuck. And the reason why they were called the country boys is because that's what they were. They were country guys, and they acted country, and they dressed country. If you said to one of them, well, what does it mean when they say dress to your left? They wouldn't know what the fuck you mean. It means pull your dick to your left. If the guy's gonna measure you for your pants, you dress to the left. What does that mean, Frank? You wouldn't know what the fuck they was talking about. Because he never had shit like that made, He's off the rack. He would not dare to offend me to the extent of telling somebody that he was gonna put a contract on me.
Being white is perhaps the most dangerous thing that an agent can do on this job. Because if you're discovered, either one or two things, they're going to think either you could be an informant, and that's big time trouble where they could whack you right in the spot.
When Nicky looked at you, he looked through you. One time, this guy walked up to me and said, Nicky wants to see you. There was nothing I could do. I mean, I had to go see him. But when I walked in that room, is somebody going to grab me from behind, cut my throat, throw me on the floor, shoot me in the head? So my knees got very weak. It was probably a 10, 12-yard walk that lasted about 3 hours in my mind. When I walked in the room, he looked at me, he tilted his head, he picked up a tin foil and said, You want some coke? I said, nah, I don't want no coke. And everybody started laughing. When I heard the laughter, it broke the ice.
Geronimo, he wasn't afraid. But I know for a fact that Barnes would kill the informants in a minute. And he'd take out insurance policy killings, which would just kill somebody because he might be an informant.
In the drug business, if you're not willing to terminate, you won't survive. It's a simple equation because you'll see as you evolve, you'll begin to see that if you aren't willing to terminate, you might yourself be terminated. So you have to use violence as a means to resolve certain problems. That's the way this game was played, and it's always been played that way. And if you don't see it, you won't survive. Anybody who's in powder, who's not willing to terminate, will be terminated.
There was no regret. It was really business. It was work. It was, and I say work, I'm using a term that he would have and did use. They saw that as a business necessity to eliminate a danger of law enforcement, to eliminate potential witnesses who would threaten the organization. There was no compunctions about committing murder.
Even the chainsaw, as bizarre as it may seem, that was a hit that was contractual obligation. I think as cold-hearted as it is, it's a means to an end. We're talking about two different systems of values, and if you turn on television at night and you see a picture of a young person who was a suicide bomber, in your mind, it's incomprehensible why anyone could do that. But to those people within that system of values, that's totally acceptable.
Middle of 1976. There was a birthday party that we, through informants, we got wind that he was throwing himself a birthday party.
I threw Nick a big party at the Time of Life building. In the street, that's all you could hear about. Did you get an invitation to Nick's party? You know, so if you didn't get one, you was just like outcast, you know. I really liked it also because it was very secure. They had two places that I could have his bodyguards that they could check for weapons, because I didn't want any weapons in there. And I didn't want the police slipping in there, undercover police slipping in there.
We decided what we would do is, obviously we would want to see who all of his Confederates were, and we would want to see them together. We decided that we would infiltrate the party if we could, and we would photo and identify all the different players that would come and go to this very, very, what we expected to be a very lavish party.
In the middle of the party, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning now, and somebody comes upstairs, so they don't know what's going on. It was like, Mrs. Barnes, do you know that there's a lot of federal agents downstairs looking at everybody's cars and taking down license plates?
It became a little bit of a legend because every waiter in the place seemed to be talking into his tray.
We actually had an undercover officer pose as a maitre d' at the party, where he was able to actually observe, the tributes that were given to Nicky Barnes. There were people that actually came up to him and handed him paper bags filled with cash. He was an arrogant drug dealer that needed to be taken down.
God bless America. We said that at all our birthday parties because we had freedoms here that we wouldn't have anywhere else. And we exploited them. What we wanted to do was get involved with a business to surface a substantial amount of clean money. And this was the subject matter of periodic council meetings among us.
I think it's every gangster's dream to ultimately envision himself going, quote unquote, legit. And they have fancies about their kids going to prep schools, and one day their kid was going to be a senator and this and that.
I remember him saying that he felt closer to getting out of the game than he had ever felt at that time because he was getting money from his investments. I remember him talking about that all that stuff he wanted to be the girls one day.
We were getting kilos by the hundreds from Madonna. That whole part of the operation, which brought in income, was so finely tuned that we were able to step away from that and look beyond it to our broader vision. And that's when it was at its peak.
I was asked to do a piece on him. I said, of course I would, because he seemed juicy, because he stood there and went like this to everybody. Every gang, the Italian crime, the Jewish crime, the Irish, as they came through, the dynamic was you were a criminal, you killed people, you made money, you invested in legitimate businesses, and you became a CEO.
I recall getting a phone call from a fellow by the name of Fred Ferretti, and he said, David, we're going to put an article in the Times, and this will be the front page picture. 2 days after that, I get a call from a fellow who introduces himself as A.M. Rosenthal. He says, my name is A.M. Rose, and I said, perhaps you don't understand. I can't get involved in this posing Barnes for a picture. He said, no, Mr. Brightbow, perhaps you don't understand. If I don't get him posed for a picture the way you want, he said, I'm going to put that picture when he was arrested in the middle of the night, and it was for the murder, and it's got a number across his chest, and he looks like he ate the victim's eyes. I'm going to put that on the front page of the New York Times. He said, what time will your photographer be here?
He said, well, just bring me something down to the attorney's office to put on. So I bought him this red, white, and blue tie. Because, usually when they put an African-American on a cover with a mugshot, you just think guilty already,
Well, I guess I kind of felt a little swell-headed about it. But at the same time, I was kind of praying in my heart of hearts that the red, white, and blue tie might have had a little bit more significance than the name Mr. Untouchable.
I remember reading the New York Times and opening up the magazine, and there was this cocky, flamboyant, look at me, I am Mr. Untouchable.
When I saw the article, I looked at it, I said, oh, shit.
Oh, man, that was turmoil then.
Whatever our problems was before, they have quadrupled.
You gotta follow the rules. I mean, the cop's job is to lock us up, and our job is not to get locked up. But you don't go na-na-na-na-na to stand up there in the front of the New York Times with Mr. Untouchable. Yo, what, are you fucking crazy? What are you doing?
I came into the office on Monday morning, and around 8 o'clock in the morning, the phone rang. And it was Griffin Bell, who was the United States Attorney General at the time. And he said to me something to the effect that he had just come back from a cabinet meeting. And he said that President Carter had read this article. And he said, this is the most important case in the United States today.
The letter that President Carter sent a month or so later, even though it was a nicely written letter, I took that to mean, don't screw it up.
When me and G got happened, when we started rolling, I mean, we were like the White Knights of Harlem, man.
We didn't push that we wanted to meet Nicky face on and do it hand to hand. We knew that was stupid. We weren't going to do that. But we did know that he was the head of the organization, and we wanted to deal with his people.
I told Wally, well, tell your people, you know, not only can I, you know, do business with them on my level in terms of buying dope for them, but I could do services for them. Variety of different services, whatever they need. Money laundering, I got many connections still in New York. I do it myself. So Wally dropped that on Jazz, and I guess Jazz wanted to test the waters. You know, he wanted to test the waters, so he went for it.
Running a bunch of small businesses, I accumulated a lot of small cash, and I just tried to reduce the cash. You know, I didn't want to report it, didn't want to put it in a bank account or whatever the case may be. I was trying to reduce the quantity of cash, and I needed somebody to do this with. Somebody mentioned the fact that Wally had somebody that did this, and the person that they recommended was a DEA agent.
Wally is a fucking asshole. I mean, nobody goes to him for anything. How could Jazz even go to this guy for anything except that he was so motherfucking obsessed with trying to make himself look self-sufficient? But he wasn't independent of me.
Jazz commits to do another laundry, another money wash with us. And me and Geronimo go upstairs. There's Jazz, there's the man, you know, sweet, nicely dressed, big medallion studded with diamonds, Jazz right across, you know, the front of the medal, you know.
I really wasn't concerned who he was, you know, because I wasn't doing anything that required me to be worried. I'm just changing small bills to big bills. I mean, it's a simple transaction.
I pretty much rolled the dice. I told him, listen, Jazz, up until now, you know, I've done things with your people and the shit hasn't come back right. You know, I did an eighth with Petey, you know, for $8 grand. The fucking shit fucking sucked.
All I'm doing is saying to me, I'm trying to change this money. He's constantly, you know, trying to interject, you know, talking about drugs, man. I'm like, yeah, huh? And I'm trying to complete this transaction.
I was waiting for your package. And then I went ahead and came from FedEx. And I wasn't happy with that either. That was worse than the stuff I had worked for.
Now, all Jazz had to say at that point was, what the fuck you talking about? I don't know these fucking people.
You had them check with me, man. Tell Geronimo come by Friday night and I'll talk to him.
But he went with it. He went with it. Again, big one, big evidence on tape. Plans were laid, the logistics were laid out. We had this phenomenal assembly of state troopers, police officers, federal agencies. You know, it was going to be a major sweep.
I saw the surveillance. They had me surrounded. So when I came back out of the bar after I dropped off my gun, they arrested me.
When Nick got arrested, they could not get him on possession. They got him what they call continual criminal enterprise that had just came into law.
The case that they made against me, they had to manufacture. I'm saying that they didn't have a case against me. I'm not saying we had flooded Harlem with drugs, Harlem, the Bronx, and Brooklyn. I'm not talking about that, you know, but it was done masterfully enough so that we were beyond just their surveillance. I didn't even know Diaz.
While there were problems with virtually every piece of evidence that we we had such a variety, a matrix, if you will, to go back to the organization. We had proof that implicated each and every member in the organization and fit in with what Wally Fisher had told us was the relationship among all the folks from Nicky on down.
The government bent over backwards to make it be Nicky Barnes' case. And they were willing to take whatever steps are necessary.
The focus was, we are targeting Barnes because he was Mr. Untouchable.
That trial was the first anonymous jury in the history of the United States. I said, Judge, how you can pick a jury if you don't know what their names, addresses are, if you don't know what religion they are, if you don't know what kind of community they come from, you don't know what their economic background is?
The trial was bullshit, huh? They put 15 people on trial in a major drug conspiracy that half of them didn't know the other half.
A big thing was that they had these just mountains of electronic surveillance tapes and telephone taps and tap this and so and informers who had wires on them. A whole lot of shit that they had. But nothing with Nicky Barnes on it. Nothing.
You have to understand, you're not going to find Nicky Barnes out on the street selling drugs any more than you would expect to find the chairman of General Motors on the assembly line making cars.
That's what we did every day. It became a normal part of life. We got up in the morning, we got dressed, and we went to trial.
They had a star witness that we didn't know anything about. And when she got up on the stand, that was it. You know, she confirmed the continual criminal enterprise, and it just was not good. And then you got the president saying, you know, I want him off the street.
Right in the middle of the trial, after the 7th game of the World Series, and Reggie Jackson won the game with a home run, his 3rd home run. And Jimmy Breslin, a columnist for the New York Daily News, wrote a column the next day describing a conversation he had after the game. There was a little black kid from Harlem, maybe 8 or 9 years old. And Breslin had said to him, well, I guess your hero is Reggie Jackson, right? The kid said, no, my hero is Nicky Barnes.
When I got word that we had a verdict, I got in an elevator and I'm coming down, and at some point, Bob Fisk got on the elevator, and we're getting ready to walk over to the courtroom. And I said to myself, Bob seems very cool, very calm. I don't feel like that. And then Bob turned to me, he said, gee, I wonder what the jury wants to know. I wonder what their note says. And I looked at him, I said, Bob, it's not a note, it's a verdict.
Leroy Nicky Barnes was perhaps Harlem's and one of the country's biggest drug dealers. He sported the fur coats and fancy cars that marked his success. At 45, he was known as the Untouchable because the law couldn't seem to lay a hand on him. But today, he was sentenced to life in prison.
When the conviction comes down, your mind goes to fast forward, and you immediately fast forward to the appeal process. The business plan, in the event that I was convicted, was that we were going to keep our investments going, and we were going to keep powder coming in, and we were going to maintain the same type of discipline that we had when we were all together.
I knew that I had to be strong. I had my girls, and I had to keep hold of what he had. Nick is not here, you know, but we still here, you know. So, you know, business as usual. But nobody stood behind me with that. And the longer he was away, the more he saw or started hearing things in the street that he didn't like.
Man, I'm in the joint. I got life with no motherfucking parole. And I'm still doing shit for these niggas, man. And they couldn't even honor that.
Why am I sending out supply after supply and they're sitting out there fucking up money, buying bad loads of shit?
I think that probably the breakdown began with Guy's obsession to fill my shoes. The king is dead, but long live the king, because I'm the new king.
There was a lot of chaos. It was a whole different game, especially when crack came on the scene. There was a lot more violence out. It was a lot more scarier, man, to be out.
The Barnes organization defended those locations, and they shot a lot of people.
The game got funky. You know, it just got funky. Like a nightmare, from a dream to a nightmare.
One day I went down to David Breitbart's office and I was looking and I saw a piece of paper and it said, pick up Nick's jewelry from Shemeka. I found out that she was, Nick's little girlfriend.
She had heard about Shemeka and she was pissed. She was really pissed.
She changed her name to Shemeka Barnes. I think that's what I was really angry about. Because I didn't know whether, okay, were you guys so tight that you gave her your last name? He kept lying, and I knew he was lying. It changed my feelings for him a great deal. It changed my feelings a great deal.
Thelma was disloyal to me. So I called one of my buddies, And he said, yeah. He said, Nick, yeah, she was on 7th Avenue. In your Mercedes, in your white Mercedes. And he said, I didn't even see him. They called me to the car. He said, Tito called me to the car because he wanted me to see that he had your woman. Anyhow, Thelma got involved with this character, and she began to disregard what were her duties to me.
Nick knew the legitimate reason why I got angry was because of Shemeka, but he will never say that part, He'll never say, well, when she found out about Shemeka, she got upset and, so she turned to someone else. That would be like too close to the truth.
He had a girlfriend. She was a very attractive woman. He really cared about her. It was his woman. And Guy Fisher, there's an old saying, there's a lot of fish in the sea. You don't have to go after my girl. And he did. And when the word got back to Nicky, that was something that alienated him about Guy.
We bought the Apollo, and Guy was handling all of the renovation and opening of the Apollo. And I'm hearing stories about him sitting up in the balcony with my woman, kissing on my woman. Look at that guy. I'm thinking, this faggot ass motherfucker, but he got a bone with my woman. So I'm saying to myself, now, what does that mean, nigga, that you did it? You did that to her. Guy put himself in the position of dictating policy to me. I'm the one who dictated the policy, not he. You don't fuck with the king's woman. You can be a womanizer all you want, but you don't violate the rules. And when he violated them, he had to pay. I said to Frank, I want you to lay down Tito, and I want Guy in the ground. I want him horizontal, man. That's what I want done. And he said, well, I'm gonna get it done, I'm gonna get it. So anyhow, he's not doing anything, and as I'm looking at it, I know why he's not doing anything. The guys began to realize that I wasn't getting out. I'm thinking to myself, and I remember saying to myself, I can't run it, but I sure could wreck that motherfucker, man. I can't run it, but I could wreck it.
I was called by Jim Moss, my unit chief, to join him in Bill Tendy's office, and was told that Barnes contacted Bill Tendy, and either Bill played for or gave me an audio tape that he had made of a conversation he had had with Barnes.
Now, go ahead. Tell me what it is you have in mind.
In general, there a few friends of mine, former friends of mine, that were just...
I can't hear you very well.
They were a couple of friends of mine that were supposed to be doing things for me, you know.
Yeah?
And well, they're doing things against me, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no way to reach out to get to them, and I want to get back at them, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's my primary reason.
I listened to that tape and tried to understand what would he hope to gain by cooperating, because there was very little we could actually offer him in the way of a reward or an inducement. Bill said it's always the same. It's revenge, revenge, revenge.
Took my money. You got my honey.
Nick went about setting me up, which was another thing that really hurt. They extradited me back to New York. And I'm sitting there watching television, and it's a flash that Leroy Nicky Barnes has turned state's evidence. This person's been arrested, that person, this person, that person, that person, and the wife of his 2 children. And
9 former associates of Harlem drug king Leroy Nicky Barnes charged today with narcotics conspiracy and 6 murders. As Jim Van Sickle learned, the man behind the charges is none other than Barnes himself.
When I heard that he had flipped, I was shocked and surprised, because I had a great deal of respect for this guy, as did everyone I knew. So it did come as a major, major surprise. It was almost unbelievable.
He put something beautiful together, and he made us men and people who looked up and respected us. In all reality, he was a coward. I mean, I can say that from my heart.
I don't think he did it because he thought he'd get a deal. I went to bat for him. The U.S. attorney at the time, Rudy Giuliani, went to bat for him. But he had to know that was not likely to be in the cards for him.
If Nick would have flipped right away because he didn't want to go to jail, I think I would have been surprised, because he was the John Gotti before John Gotti. He was the gangster. He was the man, But when I found out why he did it, you want to talk about the word of don't rat? Well, that's one thing that's real strong, but fucking payback and revenge is even stronger.
Just before the trial, Shemeka was murdered.
Well, she was in this bar up on Broadway, Amsterdam, where everybody used to hang out. 2 guys come in, and they walk up to her and shoot her in the head.
Shemeka went down. They did it to intimidate me, in hoping that I would retract whatever my testimony, or that I would be reluctant to maybe testify at a trial.
Nicky Barnes was once New York's biggest heroin dealer, heading up an alleged 7-man drug ring called the Council. Now he is the government's star witness recently testifying in court and at a presidential commission accusing his former partners of drug conspiracy and murder.
When the time arrived for me to actually testify to them on the stand, I was overwhelmed by guilt. And I had been betrayed. I had every reason to testify against them and no reason at all to feel guilty. But it's that street corner indoctrination, that criminal ethic, that street corner value system, it's overpowering. And I started crying on the stand.
These stories generally are only told by people like Nicky Barnes. People that already told these stories on the stand, and they're rats. You don't inform all your friends. But at that point there, the guy I knew ceased to exist. For me, the Nick I knew died.
In other words, it's saying that, hey, Nick, you broke the golden rule. And I'm saying, what good is a rule if the rule ain't a jewel that's fit for the crown of a king? If you're gonna take the rule and just use it to make bling, and you're gonna say, fuck the king, then the king gonna sing. I think my information resulted in maybe 75 or 80 felony convictions. They have a place in Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary that they call it the Nicky Barnes range, because all of the people up there were people that I gave up.
My name is Frank James. I'm calling from Otisville FCI prison in upstate New York, and I'm doing life without parole plus 40 years. I've been down 23 years and 11 months. The worst thing that the government or whoever did it could have done was name him Mr. Untouchable.
I think that when people talk about him, they'll talk a little about him being a snitch, but more about him being an ex-drug addict and coming up to reach the heights that he did.
The drugs kept the hood from starving. Pushing cars, Nicky Barnes was the 70s, but there's a long list of high-profile celebrities.
It's only one thing that's definite about that life that's not gonna last.
One time, one day grabs me as I'm about to blast heat, 40 side of burning. I turn well, he asks me, what you up to? The cops gonna bust you. I was a teen drunk off brew, stumbled. I'm
like everybody else, you know. My credit cards is maxed out, you know. But I go home every night and I ain't got to take a different route. And I don't have to have guns under the cushions in my house. And, you know, people can come to my door and announce now, you know, and people can even know where I live. And I don't have to change my name to take a flight somewhere and do all of those things. So that's the dues that I paid, and that's what I try to pass on to these kids that want to be gangsters.
Pre-trial hearing is over, it's real for the soldier. Walks in the courtroom, the look in his eyes is wild. Triple homicide, I sit in the back aisle. I want to crack a smile when I see him.
I'm not trying to justify or rationalize anything, you know, that was taking place in terms of, you know, drugs in the community, violence, any of those things. But I think that, and this is my opinion, is that the real criminals in this country, you know, even though the media tends to focus on the ones that are at the bottom of the social ladder, The real criminals are at the top.
How we ever gonna get up if that's how we get down? Shame when you really look at it. My folk against your folk. But we all kin folk. Somebody gotta make a change.
I'm still here. Yeah, I'm still here, and I'm still keeping on. You understand? You need to lay down. What you did, you did. You understand? I don't have no love for you, but I don't hate you. Why? I don't know. I wish I could tell you why I don't, but I don't. You understand? I'm not going to wish you bluebirds, you understand, but I'm not going to wish you falcons and buzzards either. Just go ahead, man, and just live your life, whatever you're doing, and just leave us alone. Leave the streets alone. You understand? And if you do have to say something, send a positive word out there to them kids and tell them that what you did was wrong. Tell them that. You understand? Stop trying to relive the life that you had, because when you really look at it, we didn't do nothing. So whatever you did, and for whatever reason you did it, it's done. Rest. Rest, brother.
During the course of my readings, I read something else. I read Moby Dick. Ahab, in his relentless pursuit of a white whale, in my mind, was synonymous with the pursuit of the green dollar. And he was willing to accept all of the consequences that went along with that. Captain Ahab was just dynamically involved in his own destruction. Ahab said at one point, "My greatest torment has become my greatest joy." But it's that obsession that drove him. And it's that same type of obsession, I think, that not only I felt, that all of us felt when it came to pursuing the dollar, and then even sacrificing whatever had to be sacrificed to get it done. When I came into the program, I left Nicky Barnes behind. And I emerged from that a different person with a different set of values, a set of values that they don't even understand. And they could call me a snitch. I'd rather be here and be considered a betrayer of them than to be in there and to be considered a stand-up guy while they could be out here violating the rules. I'm out there in. Guy, life without parole. That means he's gonna die in prison. That means Frank's gonna die in prison. It's not as though I hear their names and I say, "Oh, I forgive them, for they know not what they did." No, that ain't happening, you know. I'm saying, yeah, forgive them, but they now know who they fucketh with, and it shouldn't have been me.
People of our nation, as you all know, drugs have been declared public enemy #1. Drugs are quickly and unconsciously becoming a part of our culture. The leaders of our country are making an all-out effort to combat against drug abuse. But if we are ever to defeat this problem, we all must participate because we all are involved. Whether we indulge in drugs or not, merely by living in this drug-infested society. As our contribution to the drug war, we are introducing a new dance called the kick. Hoping those of you who are trying to kick, or those of you who would like to kick, will get caught up on the kick influence. In order to lick it, we got to kick it, kick it, kick it.